Welcome to the Business Talk, a global podcast series that highlights distinguished faculty members and their impactful scholarly contributions. I'm Deepak, your host from India. We are truly honored to welcome Dr. Dana Alden as our distinguished guest for today's episode. Before we begin, allow me to introduce the guest for today's episode. Dr. Dana Alden is the William R. Johnson Junior Distinguished Professor of Marketing at the Shidler College of Business, University of Hawaii. He earned his PhD in Marketing and International Business from the University of Texas at Austin in 1990 and has since built a distinguished scholarly career spanning cross-cultural consumer behavior, global branding, healthcare marketing, and sustainable marketing. Dr. Alden's research has appeared in some of the most respected publications in the field, including the Journal of Marketing, the Journal of International Marketing, and the Journal of Academy of Marketing Science. His contributions to healthcare decision-making have also been recognized in prominent interdisciplinary journals such as Medical Decision-Making, Social Science and Medicine, and Health Psychology. A passionate advocate for sustainability in business, Professor Alden develops and teaches dedicated undergraduate and MBA courses in sustainable marketing at Shidler. He co-founded an AMS Sustainable Marketing and Innovation SIG and has served as a co-chair of the Research Innovations in Sustainable Marketing Symposium in both 2023 and 2025. He currently serves as the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Sustainable Marketing, where he is committed to bridging evidence-based research and real-world practice to address the world's most pressing sustainability challenges of our time. In this episode, Professor Dana Alden shares key insights from his research, Green by Design, the psychology, politics, and practice of sustainable marketing. Let's not keep you waiting. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dana Alden to the conversation. Professor Alden, we deeply appreciate your gracious acceptance of our invitation. It's an honor and privilege to host you today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your podcast, and it's great to meet you and to know about the good work you're doing on Businesstalk. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, the term sustainable marketing means different things to different people. How do you define it from a researcher's perspective? And where does it sit on the broader marketing agenda today?
Yeah, this is one of the big challenges faced by the field. First of all, we have, academics love to debate, but unfortunately, this really muddies the water. So, for example, there's this question about whether it's sustainable marketing or sustainability marketing. And the Global Definition Handbook of Marketing Terms has defined it as sustainable marketing and sustainability marketing as the marketing of sustainability. So that's how I like to think of it. But even within that term, there are many different definitions. For example, the NYU, New York University, Stern School of Business, which is very prestigious and highly ranked, has a center for sustainability research. And when they do their annual survey of sustainable consumer packaged goods product sales, they include animal cruelty, they include organic, in addition to products that are more climate friendly rather than less. But many people do not. And so there is this real challenge between trying to understand where the boundaries are between sustainable marketing's focus and where it's not. So there is this challenge. To us, I think if you look at our aims and scope, we focus on two major issues in the Journal of Sustainable Marketing, and that's probably the best place for me to get the conceptualization that we use. One is that the action within the corporate world or public world, private, nonprofit, or government agency or whoever, is working to reduce the global footprint in terms of carbon, in terms of other types of pollution like methane gas, in terms of plastic pollution, microplastics, in terms of toxic chemicals that are exposed to workers and to the rest of us, and those kinds of areas where they're really working to reduce the overall environmental impact. We also include fair trade. And so I think in sustainable marketing, when I teach the course, when I do research, I really emphasize the importance of social equity within supply chains. This is really, really critical because if we don't treat workers fairly, a living wage, benefits, the opportunity for advancement and education of their children and health for their children, non-exposure to very hazardous chemicals. To me, we're really not addressing the overall field of sustainable marketing. So I do emphasize that as well. I try to make sure that my students and the researchers I work with are considering both of those areas. So environmental issues and fair trade issues are at the core of what we do. Now, what that leaves out, I'm fine with including animal cruelty, but I don't think it's a core issue for sustainable marketing. And I'm fine with including organic as long as we realize that all organic does not necessarily mean that it is better for the environment. That's why we have to do life cycle assessments, because in the case of some organic products, they actually generate, first of all, they take more land to grow them. They take more intensive machinery, typically. Sometimes they come from far away rather than locally produced. So you have to really look at their overall footprint. I don't think they're automatically more sustainable, but I'm fine with including those two as long as they meet those other greenhouse gas and plastic pollution reduction functions. So that's how I would define it, environmental and fair trade. It would exclude diversity in terms of what we focus on in sustainable marketing. Not that that's not important, because let's face it, if your company has representatives of many different ethnic groups, religious groups, ages, you're going to get a better overall perspective. Just as any ecosystem that's more diverse is a stronger ecosystem. So it's the same thing in terms of diversity. But we look at that as more of a human resources issue and not something that we focus on in the journal or in our Research Innovation Sustainable Marketing Symposium. So again, environmental issues and fair trade issues. That's our major focus. Now, that would include, just one last thing, that would include logistics and circularity. So anything that companies can do to reduce their global footprint, from packaging to supply chain management, all the different things that they do, that would be fair area for us to look into as sustainable marketing researchers.
Professor, your research spans the US, South Korea, and global MNCs. What are the most striking differences you have observed in how consumers across these cultures respond to green marketing?
Say it again, consumers that do what to green marketing?
Yeah. Your research spans the US, South Korea, and global MNCs. What are the most striking differences you have observed in how consumers across these cultures respond to green messaging?
Okay. Well, this is very interesting. There's a colleague of mine named Shintaro Okazaki at King's College in London, and he has looked at how sustainability is defined in different cultures. And he's found that in certain places like Japan, there's a real emphasis on recycling. And so if one says to Japanese consumers in a survey, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about sustainability or a sustainable product, they're going to say recycling or its ability to be recycled. If you go to another country, they might think that it has to do more with minimal impact in terms of pollution that it generates in the production process or single-use plastic waste. So it really varies on where one is in the world in terms of the way that mitigation issues, that is, issues that companies and governments can take and nonprofits can take to reduce their impact on the environment. It really varies depending on where you are, the way that consumers view it. That said, there are still certain base elements that are really important to create a more sustainable product offering. And I think in many cases, that's somewhat standardized. So, for example, consumers everywhere in Europe, North America, India, I assume, although I haven't done research there, but I think they see packaging as a major contributor to landfill, to waste, to pollution. And so they are generally, like in the cosmetics category, wherever you go, there's been a move towards refillable clamshell products. where you can take it back and you can get an insert that goes back into the product. So refillables in the cosmetics industry are pretty well going global. So it really depends on the industry and it depends on the country. There are these differences, but there are also a lot of similarities.
Professor, when companies like P&G, Colgate Palmolive, and Shiseido make sustainability claims, how much of that is driven by genuine strategy versus consumer pressure? And what does that evidence tell us?
Well, that's a great question. Again, we have this very strong knowledge, and NYU Stern most recent report points this out between consumer intention and consumer behavior. So I do think in certain categories, like cosmetics, there is more interest on the part of consumers in buying products, number one, that are healthy for their skin, for example. So this intersection between healthfulness and sustainability, being friendly to the environment, they're very much overlapping. So there's a segment of consumers in the United States which we refer to as lifestyle and health and sustainability consumers, the LOHAS segment. It's a segment that's been identified and measured every year by the Natural Marketing Institute, which is part of a much larger research company. And they're about 19% of American consumers, North America, US consumers. And it varies 18, 19, 20. And they're really looking for a combination of environmentally friendly and healthful products. So they don't necessarily, disaggregate that. They want them to be together. And I think in the cosmetics category, where you're so much involved with personal contact on your skin and going into your body through your pores, that's where you really see people looking for sustainable in terms of health and minimal environmental impact going on. For example, they look for organic ingredients. They look for packages that can be refilled. And those that are just generally using less the chemicals that they would consider questionable. So I think it varies by category, but generally speaking, people want to be sustainable much more than they're able to because of marketplace constraints. And we can talk about some of those constraints when you'd like to.
Professor, there is often a gap between what brand managers say publicly and what they actually prioritize internally. How wide is that gap when it comes to sustainability and what drives it?
I can't speak for all brand managers. I don't even have a representative sample, but I can tell you that my colleagues and I have interviewed 45 fast-moving consumer goods brand managers at the highest level in well-known companies, all the ones you know and are listed on all the major stock indices around the world. And they are producing products like cereals or for example, soaps and detergents and then beauty products too. So everybody in home care, personal care, and packaged food. We interviewed these managers, 45 of them, in depth, 1 hour each. And I can tell you that they all expressed a desire to be more sustainable than their companies are able to be. And a lot of the reasoning that they offered is the structure of the marketplace, the fact that they're almost all publicly held companies and they're very sensitive to quarterly returns. And they have to meet the ROI expectations. They have to meet the P&L statement expectations. And on top of them, they have higher level vice presidents and presidents who are reporting to boards and again have to be very driven by quarterly returns. And so most of these sustainable innovations that they talked about require an important amount of capital upfront to invest and change supply chains and change packaging and change the overall distribution of the product if they're going to try and become more circular or whatever. And as a result, they are hesitant to do anything too major because it's risky for them to do so. That doesn't mean they don't want to. I don't think they go around telling everybody that their brand is super sustainable. They have most of them have corporate sustainability officers who do the annual CSR, corporate social responsibility report. And in that report, they will have greenhouse gas emission reduction goals and objectives. And they'll talk about how they're working towards net zero by 2035, 2050. And they leave that to those folks, to the CSO, the corporate sustainability officer, and their staff. They don't really run around doing that, but they do want to do it because most of them feel, I mean, most of the managers we talk to are in their 30s, some in their 40s, but they're not, they're going to see the effects of global warming, they think, in their lifetime. And so they're very concerned about it. They want to do more, but they face these systemic macro level constraints that make it harder for them to do it. I can't get into details because of proprietary information, but I can tell you a major company that you know about, that everybody knows about, that's in the home cleaning category, among many others, tried to put a refillable product onto the shelf in a major multinational bricks and mortar retailer. And they put it out there. They felt that the fiscal office, their controller, their financial people didn't give them enough budget to communicate and to talk about it. It was a refillable that tested in the labs perfectly. So, for example, when blinded consumers took the cleaning product and used it in the one-off, packaging, it cleaned their tables or whatever just as well as the one that is a bottle that you put a tablet into or a plastic container, doesn't matter, and you put a refillable tablet into it, shake it up, and then you could spray, and they couldn't tell the difference in terms of cleaning, smell. They were perfectly happy with it. But when they put it out onto the shelves, it didn't move quickly enough. And this particular bricks and mortar retailer has a drop dead date of about 9 months. And if your brand, your new product isn't moving well, and I understand why. I'm sure in India it's the same thing. Competition for shelf space is incredibly high. It's tough to get any space for any new product. So if your product isn't moving and the Nielsen scanner data is showing that it's not selling well enough, then they're going to make you take it out. And they're going to make you pay a fee on the way out and a fee on the way in. So you've got the product development costs, you've got the testing costs, you've got the distribution and manufacturing costs, and the cost for going into the bricks and mortar and the cost for pulling it out. And I'll be honest with you, this manager was just like, I don't know about this. I'm kind of afraid of it now because they feel like they got burned. So I said to the manager, I said, well, why didn't you just target LOHAS consumers, like in the state of California, which is has a lot of pro-environmental consumers there? Why don't you just start small? Oh, no, no, we're mass marketers. We either roll it out across the country and go big, or we don't do it. So that's the challenge they face in terms of what we would call a disruptive innovation, which is really a major change in the product form. They're really afraid of disruptive and even more afraid of radical, where it's entirely different, radical innovations. Now, that doesn't mean it hasn't been happening. It has, but they're still very nervous about it because of all the disruption to the current production, the current sales and market share, and the cost up front. The payout over time is long. And again, they have these quarterly returns they have to satisfy. So it's a huge challenge for brand managers. And I came away really sympathetic with the challenges they face. I went into it like, come on, guys, we can do this. Let's just put them out there. They'll sell. We need to do it for the environment, for our kids, our grandkids. But after the 45 interviews, I really appreciate how complex it is and difficult for them.
Professor, greenwashing has become a major concern for consumers and regulators alike. How can businesses communicate their sustainability efforts authentically without crossing that line?
Yeah, that's a great question. Greenwashing is a very sensitive issue, and unfortunately, too many companies have put their products in green bottles with nature scenes on them. They're not really environmentally friendly per se. Maybe they have one healthful ingredient in there. They still may generate a lot of indoor air pollution, for example, these cleaning products. But they put it in like a green bottle to make it look earth friendly. They don't necessarily make a strong claim that it's environmentally friendly, but they, with the pictures of the trees or nature and then the green packaging, they try to imply that it is. And consumers are very skeptical, first of all. Again, I don't know what it's like everywhere in the world, but the United States, consumers generally are very distrustful of anything institutional, government, courts, companies. I mean, they just don't know if they can believe them anymore. So if you give them even a little inch for doubt, about whether you're being truthful or whatever. Now with social media and all the social media influencers and the experts out there, there's going to be a meme about your company very quickly, and pretty soon it will spread like wildfire across the internet, and people will be very unhappy with your brand, and they may walk away from you altogether. So I think companies have to be very careful about this, and the way to avoid this is to be really transparent about what elements are green and what elements aren't. For example, if your product's bottle is recyclable, but not in all states of the United States or in all parts of the world, that should be noted. And it should not be in little small print down at the bottom. It should be pretty clear. If it's using post-consumer recycled plastic as part of the packaging, that should be noted. So the problem that these companies face in terms of packaging is that what they refer to as real estate, which is the packaging availability for information, is very limited. And they're competing with other messages that tend to resonate more with more consumers, like high quality, low cost, easy to use, always available. These kinds of attributes tend to be top of mind for most consumers. Sustainability is way down on the list for most people. Again, not for all segments. For this 19% of American consumers, it's higher up. But then there's the other 80% for whom it's much lower. So mass marketers have a hard time explaining what's going on in terms of sustainability. And it's complicated. It's really complicated. I use the example of organic products, and an organic product may or may not be better for the environment than a non-organic one. It's certainly better for your health. I mean, I think that's clear. Fewer pesticides is a good thing. But whether it's better for the environment overall depends on the life cycle assessment for that particular product and how much greenhouse gas is being emitted and what kind of greenhouse gas is being emitted as it's being produced and distributed. So it's very complicated. It's a tough issue, and it's easy for some companies to overstate what they're doing for the environment because they think it's a good thing, and that's going to get you in trouble. So transparency, honesty, and trying to make sure that information about your sustainable programs is front and center on your website and in your social media. Too many companies, when it comes to sustainability, they put at the very bottom of their website, and there's just one little link that's about, 12-point font, kind of small, you can't really see it, and you have to dig to find out about it. So it really should be something that all companies are working to educate consumers about and put it more front and center in their website. Because look, let's face it. I mean, we see evidence of, I just read an article today. I read all kinds of great newsletters. There's Trellis Briefing, there's Clean Technica, Science Daily. There are all these amazing newsletters that are documenting the growth of global warming. And the latest one is that in the Gulf of Mexico, which some people want to call the Gulf of the United States, but I'm still going to call it the Gulf of Mexico, the surface water temperatures are rising really fast. And what that means is that the next cyclone or hurricane, we call them hurricanes here, comes up from the Keys and up into Florida or through the Gulf. It's going to drop all that warm water and it's going to fuel it and turn it into a super hurricane. So like category 5. So there's going to be more and more of these destructive storms. And if you are, I went to a conference called Sustainable Brands, and the manufacturer of Heinz ketchup was there. And he was very concerned about the fact that in the San Joaquin Valley in California, US, where they grow their tomatoes, and they're very proud of their Heinz ketchup tomatoes. That's their big value proposition. We have the most awesome tomatoes in the whole world. No one's better on tomatoes than us. But they're concerned that with the rising temperatures in that valley and the lack of water due to less snowfall in the Sierra Mountains, they won't be able to grow their tomatoes anymore, or at least they won't be able to grow them like they have. They won't taste as good. So, any manager of any fast moving consumer good or hotel property or car manufacturer or durable product, if they don't think this is jeopardizing their long term health of their corporation, they're nuts. They're just nuts. So, it's in their own interest and the board of directors' interest to make sure that they're doing what they can to get to net zero and stop this rise of global temperatures. I like that people are now calling it a global warming emergency. It's not just global warming, it's an emergency. And we're past the, oh, someday it might get to stage. We're there already. We're there already. 1.5 degrees centigrade. We're already past that on average, on average. And so that doesn't mean there won't be cold days and hot days and unexpected changes in temperature, but we're getting well up above where we're supposed to be. I mean, maybe we're not past it, but we're right up against it, right up against that 1.5-degree Paris Accord centigrade agreement. And that's within what, 20, 30 years? So it's exponential. It's going like this. It's not linear, it's exponential. And that's what's terrifying about it. I don't want my kids and grandkids living, in a 5-degree warmer centigrade world. I just think it's going to be miserable. Do you know what the wet bulb temperature phenomenon is? Have you ever
No,
heard of that?
no, Professor.
So, our bodies keep the reason that we're such successful mammals, one of the reasons, besides our brains, is that we have a very efficient cooling system. So we put out lots of heat through our pores, and perspiration keeps our skin cool. And we emit a lot of heat out through our dogs. That's all dogs can do, right? Just with their tongues. That's it. But humans can put it out all their pores. But there is a temperature in combination with humidity where you can no longer move that heat from your body out. And when that humidity and temperature reaches that level, then you're going to start cooking. You're going to literally be like an egg in water, like not hard boil, but you're going to soft boil all your organs and you're going to die from heat exhaustion. So we're rapidly getting to that, especially in the middle latitudes. And people who have to work outside, I'm really worried about them because all our ag workers, all our street workers, all our construction workers, anybody who's not in air conditioning, it's going to be tough unless they can get some clothing or something that is air conditioned internally, which people are developing. But I mean, that's where we're headed. We're going to have to all walk around in air conditioned clothing. That's the road we're on right now. So,
Professor, cross-cultural research is the core of your work. Are there universal sustainability values that marketers can lean on? Or is localization always the smarter strategy?
in terms of globalization and global standardization adaptation, okay, well, that's a very interesting question too. You have some great ones. So what our work has shown is that there are certain types of products, especially technological products, this is kind of common sense, where global standardization works just fine and it's what people want. So the more you get into B2B, the more you get into technologically rich product, then the more there's going to be standardized possibilities around the world. And that means in terms of product, distribution, communication, branding, all of that can be more or less standardized. Uh, where you get into high adaptation is where there's a large cultural and hedonic kind of emotional, less utilitarian, more emotional component to the product that's tied to local cultural values. Food is a great category. Food can be, some foods become standardized. Think about pizza. A lot of Indian food has become global. It's everywhere now. So I don't know. They probably don't standardize it. They probably adjust it. I mean, I'm sure that the Indian food in India is a lot different than it is in, say, Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. But it still looks a lot similar and tastes kind of similar. So certain products have become standardized even in the food category. But uh, those kinds of things tend to need more localized communication strategies. And then some are hybrid, where you can be standardized in some ways, and yet you need to be localized in other ways. And it really depends on the product category and the market in which you're selling your product. I do think that with social media, the days of mass advertised, completely standardized products for consumers are pretty much over. I think nowadays consumers expect products for them, goods and services, to be highly tailored to their individual wants and needs, help them solve problems better in their environment. And if they don't do that, they're less likely to purchase them. So I think in consumer products, one does need to be very mindful of adaptation. There can be some standardized elements, like the tech elements. For example, cosmetics could have the same high-tech facial ingredients to keep your skin looking younger, whether you're in India or in New York. Delhi or New York, doesn't matter. But the way you market it could do better if perhaps it's got some localized flavor to it. Then again, some very high prestigious luxury products, people want to feel like they're part of something bigger than their own country, their own culture. It doesn't matter where you are. So a global positioning for certain luxury products like Coach bags, those kinds of things tend to work pretty well because they want to be part of a global elite. So there are a lot of things to consider when you're thinking about whether to be standardized, adapted, or hybridized.
Professor, for a business leader in developing an emerging economy like India, what would
Hmm.
your top evidence-based advice be for building a sustainable marketing strategy that is both credible and commercially viable?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. And I can't say that I know the Indian market well enough to give solid advice. We are at the Journal getting quite a few submissions from India among your scholarly group, researchers at different universities across the country and in Pakistan as well, and Indonesia, so Vietnam. So I know in the South and Southeast Asian region, there is quite a lot of interest in the area and how you can do just what you're talking about. But I think that brand managers would be smart to try to build a corporate culture that takes sustainability objectives, environmental and social, and weaves them into the fabric of the overall product and the assessment. Some of the companies that we talked to are much more into this than others. So, for example, some of them actually reward their brand managers for meeting certain environmental sustainability goals, and they allow them a certain amount of freedom to spend the capital that's required to meet those goals. But it starts at the top of the company. The corporate executives at the very top and the board have to recognize the long-term risk of not doing something and never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I tell my students that all the time. So they have to recognize the risk of not doing anything and look for where they can have a win-win-win solution. So what do I mean by that? A win-win-win, as opposed to a win-win, means that you're winning for the environment and for social good. You're a net plus there. You're a net plus in terms of what the consumers, whether they're business buyers or end user consumers, what they perceive as better value, more utility for the same price, or maybe a slight premium, not too much. And then the corporation has to make money. They have to ultimately make a profit. So it has to be more environmentally friendly, more efficient in terms of profit bottom line, and also something the consumer views as a win. So let me give you an example of that. I don't know if in India this has caught on yet, but Tide has been marketing for, Procter and Gamble has been marketing Tide detergent for quite a long time as a cold water soap that works just as well in cold water as it does in hot. And I believe many consumers, especially now that all the gas prices are going so high with the war in Iran, I think a lot of consumers are mindful of how much power it takes to warm water and to wash their clothes in warm water. And so Tide has emphasized that theirs can use less water and it can use less heat, doesn't need heat at all. So that's a win for the consumers because they can see how it will save them money. It's obviously a win for the environment because you're generating less greenhouse gas. You don't have to heat the water. And it's a win for the company because it's selling more of their Tide. So I'll give you an example. One of the companies that we spoke to is in the cereal business. And our cereals come in these packaging, right? This what looks like cardboard, but it's actually cardboard with a plastic liner on the inside, plastic coating for freshness and shelf life. So they went out and they did a study of all the other competing brands on the shelves. And they found out that their cardboard was a little bit thicker than the competing brands were. So they talked to their product engineers, and it's very critical to get your product engineers involved. And they said, look, guys, women, men, whatever they were, they said, we need to make our packaging a little bit thinner. We're going to save money. It's better for the environment. And the consumer won't know. So that's the one where you only need a win-win. If the consumer's not going to know, it's within the supply chain and production process, that's great too. So it doesn't always have to be a win-win-win, but at least has to be a win-win. So let's see if we can make it packaging a little thinner. Now, the trade-off is when it's being shipped and transported on these big pallets, you don't want the packaging to break up or get smashed or ruin the cereal. So it has to be strong enough to get through the distribution process. So they came up with it. They reduced it, I think, by about an eighth or by a quarter. And they found a way to make it just as strong, just as didn't get damaged more on the way to the store. And it saved the company money. And so everybody won, the company and the environment, and the consumer didn't really care because they didn't notice the difference. So I think that the first thing brand managers in India should do is start there. Look for a way to be more environmentally friendly that also makes your company more efficient in terms of cost required to produce products. Let me give you one more example. A major meat processing company here that has tons of packaged food products has always put their frozen product inside a plastic bag, inside a plastic lined box. So they said, well, there's really no need for this because the box itself is plastic lined. But maybe consumers will feel creepy if it's not in a bag. Maybe they won't like it. So they tried it. Turned out consumers didn't care. It didn't hurt their sales, but they saved a ton of money because now they no longer have to put a plastic bag inside the box. So they were quite happy with that cost saving. The consumer didn't know, and the environment was clearly happier because there's less plastic going into it. So that's where I would start. Where can you have a win-win and hopefully a win-win-win? And that's where I would start. And the one other thing I would say is that if you're going to be really different from accepted practices, you have to make sure that you have a very strong promotion budget behind it. Do you have desiccated detergent sheets in India that you can buy instead of buying them in those big plastic bottles of liquid? Do you have
Yes.
a sheet you can buy and put? Okay.
Yes.
So if you're going to switch to that, and that's going to be a major part of your product portfolio in the detergent category, It's going to take some communications, social media experts, influencers, traditional advertising, in-store promotion, discounts and so on and so forth to get consumers to try it and then hopefully to come back and buy it again. So I do think one has to support these changes with a healthy communication budget. And darn it, financial officers understand buying factory equipment. They can do a little discounted depreciation schedule. They can figure out the return on investment. But when it comes to marketing communications, they're just like, they don't know what to do with that. And it makes them very nervous. But you need that strong support through your channels to have a good chance of succeeding. Start small, target, and then expand the franchise. That's my advice.
Professor Lavender, to conclude this episode with one last question. Looking ahead, how do you see the role of marketing evolving as a climate pressures intensify? Will it be force for genuine change, or will the discipline struggle to keep pace with the scale of the challenge?
Well, all I can tell you is that all the major business schools in Europe and the US, and from what I know in India as well, have taken this topic to heart. And they're educating. My sustainable marketing classes sell out. And I'm an okay professor. I'm not awesome. So it's the topic that draws them. I got to be honest, they're just so interested. And I just taught for the first time this semester an MBA course called Sustainable Business Management, which goes into finance, accounting, operations research, and all the different areas of business, not just marketing. And we used a simulation called the Green Business Lab, which was excellent. And again, sorry, and again, it was oversold. So the class did very well. People love it. And this Generation Z, the millennials, the older ones, the Generation Z, the ones behind them, they get it. They know there's a problem. They can feel it, and they've heard it from their parents. So they want to learn about it. So I'm very optimistic that the future generations of business leaders will take this to heart. The question is, will it happen fast enough? And from talking again to these managers, one of the things we learned was that they have a lot of younger people who are assistant or associate brand managers who are pushing them on this issue and who want to see these changes made. So I do think that coming up, there's going to be progress. Unfortunately, right now, in the United States, it became a political issue, and so we're in a bit of a dip. But the rest of the world is moving ahead. Look at what China's doing on renewables and EVs. Look at Europe, the EU, and its climate disclosure policies, its extended product responsibilities. And major states like California, fourth or fifth largest GDP in the world, has a policy very similar to what is in the EU. So one of these managers said was that if California goes some way, we're going to have to do it across the country because it's just so big. We can't have different procedures and processes in each state. So I do think that it's a train that already left the station and that there are political winds that will make it go up or down in importance, but that it's a movement that isn't going to stop. And as we get more and more warming, more and more plastic pollution in the environment, microplastics in our bodies. I mean, I don't know if are you aware of the research they did at a leading medical school where they found in the carotid artery, they found plaque, but they also found clumps of plastic, microplastic, occluding the artery. So, this is something that starting to hit people where they live, in their hearts, in their brains, and they can feel the heat. So, and the forest fires, the wildfires, and the hurricanes and tropical cyclones. It's way past the I don't think it's really happening stage. Everybody kind of gets it. So I'm optimistic that humans, being the ingenious animals that we are, will turn this thing around. But we can't wait till tomorrow. We got to start today.
Dr. Dana Alden, thank you for sharing your research, your insights, and your vision for a more sustainable future. To our listeners, we hope this episode has given you both clarity and inspiration to think differently about the role of marketing in shaping the world we live in. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep growing. Thank you once again, Professor Alden, for joining us and generously sharing your research and insight with our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deepak. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Okay.